Let's get the read on all of this and what's at stake with Jerry Seib, the Wall Street Journal executive Washington editor, who joins us obviously out of Washington. Danielle McLaughlin here, and Amy Holmes as well. Amy, ended with you. Begin with you. President still going forward with this trip when the Democratic mayor thought maybe after Charlottesville, not a good timing. What do you think?
I don't think that we should be inhibited in our free speech, particularly the commander-in-chief, and he needs to move forward on his agenda. Look, I think we all support peaceful protest, counter-protest to the president, and tonight would be an opportunity for those who disagree with the president to have their voices heard in a constructive way, but I don't think the president needs to be in hiding.
Yeah, and I wondered, that might have been a little political too, Danielle, right? Just say, don't come, Mr. President, by more or less saying you're the reason.
Isn't everything, Neil? I mean, I agree with Amy. I think that this should go ahead. I'm really hoping that the president himself doesn't ramp up the rhetoric too much, because he needs to lead by example, right? So I think he needs to say to the folks who are there for him and the folks who are there not for him that we can have a dialogue, because this is the only way that we move forward together as a country. You know,
Jerry Seib, I was catching your comments on the Wall Street Journal video, which is really cool, Jerry, I might point out. But one of the things I thought of, and maybe to harken back to what you were, the gist of it, is the president can make a grand speech, a big speech, a meaningful, substantive speech of gravitas. And not all the time, but a lot of the time, ruin it the next day or two, either with a tweet or a campaign event where he says something, you know, politically incorrect. You know the drill. And I'm just wondering how he follows up in Arizona tonight.
Well, first of all, I don't know. Second of all, it may be that he doesn't even know. He seems to judge the situation, you know, by the way he feels in the moment sometimes. I was sort of taken by something Newt Gingrich tweeted today, in which he advised the president this would be a good occasion to look more presidential, a little less confrontational, and I think, you know, as was just discussed, to turn the temperature down a bit. So we'll see. I think it's really hard to predict. Some of this may depend on what kind of crowd shows up too, because, you know, as with anybody who speaks in public, I think the president is sometimes swept along a bit by the atmosphere that he finds himself in, and I think that's a great unknown as we head into tonight.
You know, it's funny, Amy, what Jared said. I mean, when we had Newt Gingrich here a little bit to follow up on what he had advised the president to do, he echoed again with us at the top of the show. He doesn't want to step on that message. I'm paraphrasing here. Right. But sometimes he can risk doing that. Now, this is a totally different event from what he was doing last night. But how does he play it right now? Because obviously markets are up and a lot of things are up largely on the idea that he kind of righted himself a little bit here. What do you think?
Well, and a lot of people, including myself, watching the speech last night, thought that that preamble when he was speaking to the troops and the sacrifices that they make, and that he hopes when they come back to this country, they're coming back to a country that's united in love and mutual respect, that was going a long way to sort of try to
that was not by accident, right?
No, I wouldn't say so. But of course, the challenge for the president is to stick to that and not be reactive and emotional, particularly if the crowd tonight is rambunctious or raucous, or he's, you know, he has the hecklers, that he needs to restrain himself.
Yeah, one was a scripted speech, and he's very good at that, just as he was a scripted remarks. The second one's after Charlottesville to clarify his position, and then he went off script in that press conference. But what do you think, Danielle?
We're going to see whether we're going to see Trump unleashed or we're going to see Trump sticking to the script. I take Amy's point. The speech last night, tolerance, diversity, inclusion, was very, very clearly directed at righting the ship based on what happened with Charlottesville and his response to it. We will see, right? He's popular. He's more popular in Arizona than in many other parts of the country. He has attacked both Flake and McCain. I wonder if he will do that again. Remember, this is a campaign rally. So we see, I think, in a way that we haven't seen with prior presidents, this sort of, there's two tracks here. There's Trump, the president, and then there's Trump, the candidate for 2020. We'll see which one comes out tonight.
And I think it's also a challenge to his new chief of staff, General Kelly, that, you know, last night I think people also attributed this new tone with the departure of Steve Bannon and General Kelly being able to impose some discipline. Again, tonight is another,
yeah, you never know.
We'll see.
Jerry, I always think, and you follow this a lot more closely than I, so I'll defer to you on this, but I wonder, I think the president really wants to have order and sort of a procedure going forward in the White House, that his intention, maybe with putting John Kelly in the chief of staff role, getting rid of Bannon and doing all of that, is to, as we were saying here, to right the ship. But it's sort of like the you know, I don't know, the fat person. I'll use myself as the trainer, the dietitian, but doesn't lose the weight, right? Exactly. Well, in other words, you could talk a good game, you could do everything that would set up the kind of changes you want to make, but you can't do it. What do you think?
Well, look, I don't think you put John Kelly in as chief of staff unless you want more order, and I don't think you ask Steve Bannon to leave unless you think that will add to the sense of order and process in the White House. And I think everybody on all sides agrees there was a need for more order and more process.
Including the president.
Including the president. So I think you're exactly right. Everything he's done in the last few weeks would suggest he wants to move in that direction. But, he's not by nature and by history a process guy. He kind of is a gut guy, and I think that's going to be, I think you framed it right, Neil. That's the tension within now. But I don't think the president's intentions in setting up the new operation, if that's the right way to put it, can be in doubt. There seems no question that he wants a more orderly process. Whether he gets it and whether he lets it operate that way, those are still unknowns. But that's where we are, I think.
Newt Gingrich had his doubts, though. When he was here, he commended the president, thinks very highly of the president, but he had his doubts whether he could stick to that.
Well, it's, only 24 hours later, I guess, to extend your metaphor, he needs to put the lock on the fridge.
That's right.
And hide the key.
All right, then we'll see what happens. Do you think this is possible, Danielle? Do you think that maybe the fact that the president really clearly wants to do this, even jettisoning some of his friends and the people who took him along for the ride, that he wants this to work and he's going to do his damnedest to try?
I'm going to put hope above experience here, Neil, and I do believe that the addition of Kelly was a really important way of bringing order to that White House.
And changing his mind in Afghanistan.
Really, full credit.
Was acknowledging something that he never did.
Absolutely. There were so many of us who watched as Trump the candidate, knowing that so many of his positions were really untenable in the real world. So I give full credit to him, and I think there may be a cost to his base, frankly. Maybe we'll see him rile them up again tonight. To acknowledge that a man who campaigned on gut instinct, faced with the realities of the presidency and the deaths of soldiers on his hands, was able to listen to his generals and have a path forward that was grounded in fact and clear evaluation instead of gut.
And let's remember, he also did course correct during the campaign when it seemed that was, in chaos after he won the nomination, that he put Kellyanne Conway, I knew her when she was Fitzpatrick, put her in charge and got rid of Paul Manafort.
And later on Bannon.
And then later on Bannon,
right.
Yes.
Okay, guys, I want to thank you all very, very much.